everybody, and welcome to the chat. Tonight, we have a lot of stuff to go over. Not all of it is exactly brand new information, but I got in my head about it, and I said I feel like all of this ties together. The one thing that is semi sort of new, not exactly, because they started talking about this back in April, is the FCC's proposed know your customer rules. I think can't remember exactly how they are proposing this. It's a proposed rulemaking, originating voice providers, as they called them. So, you know, your service provider, Verizon, AT&T, Mint Mobile, to have stricter know your customer rules, basically saying that they would need your personal data to buy a phone. Just to simply get a phone or a SIM card or anything else that could connect to the cellular network, they're going to want to see your ID. They're going to want to have your address, name, and phone number. And to me, that just seems like a little bit of an overstep. And I kind of just felt like it tied into the other subjects that I wanted to talk about. You know, because now you are tied to this phone. They have more information about you. And Trump proposed with the NPSM-7 that we have a new definition of what could be a domestic terrorist. Now, if you're anti-American or anti-Christian, anti-capitalist, you could be labeled a domestic terrorist. And with the FCC's new know your customer rules, you can't exactly make an anonymous account to criticize them. You're not going to be able to go buy a burner phone and start a random Instagram with that phone number, since all these services need a phone number to get online now. It's going to be tied to your identity, so you're not going to be able to criticize the administration's plans, bills that they propose, things they do in the Middle East. And, you know, from there, I was thinking about the geofencing that was going on. We all saw that the FARA documents showing that Israel was geofencing American churches and gathering data on people going in and out of them so that they could push Zionist narratives onto them. And last but not least, I was thinking about the Board of Peace, New Gaza, and just how all this new technology and lack of privacy, and flock cameras, Palantir, data centers, AI, just everything comes together so that they can occupy a foreign land and build a resort on it and use biometric tracking to keep out the undesirables. So let's get into it. Hopefully by the end of this, I can wrap it up and speak coherently on it so that I can have a nice little clip and say, wow, all of that ties together? Wow. All right, let's get into it. Let's look at the FCC proposes strengthening know your customer rules. This is a newsletter sent out April 30th, 2026, so not exactly new, not exactly old. In an effort to stop illegal calls before they ever reach the American people, the Federal Communications Commission today adopted an item seeking to strengthen its know your customer rules for voice service providers. By screening new and renewing customers, originating voice service providers are in the best position to prevent scammers and other bad actors from flooding telecommunication networks with illegal calls. Stopping illegal calls is the FCC's top consumer protection priority, and the agency is taking a holistic approach by attacking them at every point in their life cycle. This includes stopping illegal calls before they enter the phone network, requiring providers to block unwarranted or illegal calls, and giving consumers more information about the calls they receive. In today's further notice of proposed rulemaking, the FCC is seeking comment on clearer, more rigorous customer verification standards. Potential measures include new requirements for providers to verify customer identities, including name, address, government ID, and alternative phone numbers before enabling service. Commission rules already require originating providers to take affirmative, effective measures to know its customers, ensure that its services are not used to originate illegal call traffic. Yet some providers are not doing enough, resulting in more illegal calls that defraud Americans and making it difficult to hold those criminals making these calls accountable. So they're also seeking public comment on how that they can make this work the best, or if people want it to work at all. I will try and post the link to where you can make comments somewhere so that everyone can have access to that. So it just goes on. They have a much longer document on the proposed rulemaking about how they're going to combat illegal calls by making everyone register their identity when purchasing a phone. I'm not exactly sure how that's going to stop illegal calls, since there are 100 different ways to make a phone call without a phone. I can go online right now and find a service that will allow me to make phone calls by the dozen if I wanted, without ever having to use a real phone. So they're claiming that they will have heavy enforcement. And they're going to charge $2,500 per illegal call for a KYC failure. And comments are due by June 25th, 2026, with replies due the next day. So we don't exactly have a long time to get in there and say that we don't want this. You know, FCC is going to collect and retain more information about American citizens than it's ever done before. Government ID numbers, addresses, phone numbers, potentially your IP information. And they're going to use this to try and deter use of other communication networks, which they're definitely going to go beyond robocalls immediately. I mean, the thing that I worry about with this is a breach issue. There's been plenty of data breaches. They happen all the time. Government entities tend to have better security than private ones, but that doesn't mean that it's impossible for a breach to happen. So I think that this needs a lot of rules around it. Honestly, this needs to not happen. This would be horrible for the American public to happen. But if it does go through, we definitely need minimization, retention limits, and security safeguards. I mean, what are they going to do to keep our information safe? How are they going to stop it from being used by other departments? And what will they do if there is a breach? I mean, any database with that kind of information is going to be heavily targeted. This was pushed through by 2 commissioners appointed by Trump, Chairman Carr and Commissioner Trusty. I don't trusty him for a second myself, but I digress. Olivia Trusty, nominated to serve as a commissioner of the FCC by President Donald J. Trump, confirmed by United States Senate in June 2025. She worked as a professional staff member of the U.S. Senate Committee on Armed Services under Senator Roger F. Wicker. Previously served as a policy director on the U.S. Senate Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation, and a legislative assistant in the office of U.S. Senator Roger Wicker yet again. She was a staff member of the U.S. House Committee on Energy and Commerce and legislative assistant, blah, blah, blah. She started off in the private sector. Brendan Carr, chairman of the Federal Communications Commission. He served previously as the agency's general counsel after first joining the FCC as a staffer back in 2012. Nominated by President Trump to serve as a commissioner in 2017 and then again by President Biden in 2023. Confirmed unanimously by the Senate 3 times. Designated him as chairman on January 20th, 2025. Under Carr's leadership, the FCC is pursuing a Build America agenda focusing on unleashing high-speed infrastructure builds through permitting reform. I mean, pretty sure we've already built high-speed infrastructure back in the day. We paid for fiber going everywhere, and then they never hooked it up. Restoring U.S. leadership in wireless, boosting space economy, and advancing our national security while strengthening the country's blue-collar workforce. Yeah, because nothing strengthens the blue-collar workforce like privacy violations. Agency's largest ever deregulatory initiative, delete. Yeah, I don't think that deleted anything that needed to be. And of course, he has 20 years of private and public sector experience in communications and high-tech policy. He worked as an attorney. Yeah. So I did find this. It said President Trump, Defense Secretary Hegseth, and the FCC chair Brendan Carr assailed media over coverage of the war in Iran. Carr threatened the broadcast license owners with repercussions. Threatened to take away their license because they did not like how they were covering the war. Now, if that doesn't seem like a overstep, I don't know what would. So we've got 2 Trump-appointed commissioners of the FCC proposing a Know Your Customer law, which is always touted as protecting the public from something, protecting the elderly, protecting the children. Usually protecting children, honestly. I mean, with the when they passed the Know Your Customer laws around pornography, they said they were protecting the children. They didn't actually do anything to protect children. Know Your Customer laws are always like this. It's a violation of your personal privacy and your civil liberties. I'm not a fan of pornography at all. I don't think you should watch it, and I think it destroys part of your brain that can help you build genuine intimacy and connection with your partner. And some people have said that overuse of pornography can actually slowly make you into a homosexual, which that kind of sounds like some sort of folklore, but apparently there's some sort of science behind the desensitization of it. But I digress again. These laws are always put up as protecting the public, the elderly, or the children, and they are simply a way to get rid of your privacy and let the government know more about you and control some facet of your life. If they wanted to, with the pornography law, if they wanted to actually protect children, they would prosecute these websites for the things that they host. You know, that was one of the big things. They said, hey, we're going to keep children off of them. And everyone said, why don't you keep children out of the videos they host instead? Because thousands of people report child pornography on these websites every day, and nothing happens. No one goes and makes them delete them. The websites don't get in trouble. So yeah, instead of making people have an ID to use the website, why don't you prosecute the website owners for what they put on the fucking website? So yeah, we have a FCC chairman who threatens to take away people's broadcast licenses for saying things that are unfavorable to the administration. We have a know your customer rulemaking coming up that would make it so that you can't purchase a phone without having it tied to your identity. And we do not have long to send in our public comments on it. Which I guess that takes me right into my next topic, which was NPSM-7 and anti-Semitism and divestment, which they don't perfectly tie in together until you look at the other topics at hand. So we've got the FCC effectively killing privacy and killing anonymity when it comes to using online services that ask for a phone number to sign up to them. Now you're going to have a phone number that is directly tied to who you are. There's not going to be any getting away from that if this rulemaking passes. And we have an administration that is redefining what domestic terrorism is. So, NPSM-7 tells federal agencies what to do more than anything. It's directing the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force, the DOJ, the Treasury, Department of Homeland Security, and the IRS to investigate networks, organizations, donors, and employees that are allegedly tied to political violence or domestic terrorism. Now, the problem is they're kind of broad on the language of what domestic terrorism is. They're saying that anti-fascism, anti-capitalism, anti-Christian, comments on migration, race, gender, and hostility toward traditional American values, whatever those are anymore, are indicators connected to political violence. That really makes it so that if you are anti-government at all, or talking about an unpopular opinion in a public space, your viewpoint could be seen as domestic terrorism. And now your phone, well, potentially, could be tied to your identities, meaning that you don't really have a safe way of engaging in a lot of these public spaces online in an anonymous manner. It's kind of just restricting where and how people can have their voices be heard. So, you know, the ACLU's talked about it. They don't exactly like it. How the NPSM-7 seeks to use domestic terrorism to target nonprofits and activists. On its face, it's chilling to read. If anyone needed proof that terrorism or political violence are slippery and fraught categories subject to political, ideological, and racial manipulation and bias, this is it. President's investigation into the Open Society Foundations and his order purporting to designate Antifa as a domestic terrorist organization, which is not a thing, deliberate attempt to sow fear and intimidate and silence opposition to the president's abuses. We cannot predict exactly how the memo will be implemented or provide legal advice on the specific questions. We can lay out what the memo does not do and what it aims to do. It does not create any new federal powers or crimes. Put another way, any political, legal, or social definition of terrorism includes ideological motivation, and there are very serious First Amendment problems with attaching criminal or other sanctions to people or groups based on ideology. Everyone is entitled, I agree, in this country, everyone's entitled to their beliefs, to act on them lawfully without fear of punishment. Well, that's, I think, kind of what this is aiming to do. It's aiming to give you fear of punishment for talking about your beliefs. I mean, that's a great way to stifle dissenting groups, commentary, things that might stop you from executing your unpopular plans further down the line. Public comment, people protesting, the public rally is a great way to show that you don't support these things and try to get your representatives to vote against them. But if you're afraid to speak up, that means there's a large hurdle between you and stopping things that you don't want your government to be doing. And the ACLU says the memo is a fever dream of conspiracies and falsehoods. Perhaps the most chilling rhetorical move the president makes is use vague, broad labels. Yeah, that's what we were talking about. Anti-Americanism, anti-capitalism, and anti-Christianity, support for the overthrow of. So I guess they don't want you talking about overthrowing the government. That could get a lot of people in trouble. Extremism on migration, race, and gender, which with this administration probably means, hey, I don't want you to treat people horribly because of them being a migrant or their race or their gender. And opposition to traditional American views on family, religion, and morality, which is funny because I think I actually have fairly traditional American views on family, religion, and morality. And I do believe this could get me in trouble at some point. I mean, I think that the nuclear family is great. I think you should expand it. I think the grandparents should live with the family, and cousins, and everybody should be together all the time. I think the family unit's one of the strongest things that you can build to generate real wealth for yourself. It's your family. And everyone living together, especially with the price of homes these days, buy a decent house, have everyone live together, and save up some money from rent. I actually believe in the traditional American family. And religion. I don't see anything wrong with being religious. I think that it's one of the things that used to at least really give people strength. And today that seems to be kind of slipped away. It doesn't help that you have a bad actor trying to turn Christianity into Judeo-Christianity and using people's religious belief as a way to get them to support a secular state in the Middle East that has nothing to do with the Bible. But I digress. Morality. They say traditional American views on morality, but I don't think they have any myself. I mean, I think you should treat people how you want to be treated. Hold yourself up with respect and pride in what you do. At every chance you have, operate on a high moral ground, which means not lying, not taking advantage of people, not exploiting other people's labor for the benefit of yourself or your businesses, not using people's information, not trying to direct a narrative to change their mind so that they could take part in or perform actions that would go directly against their own benefit. which seems to be all things that the government supports. It doesn't really matter who's in office, Republicans, Democrats, they all have, any of these politicians at the highest level have these same things that they do to take advantage of the American public. So, Justice Department announces formation of advisory committee on anti-Semitism. President Trump has made combating anti-Semitism a top priority for this administration. We thank Leo Terrell for his leadership at the Department of Justice in helping to carry out this mission, said Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche. Protecting civil rights of every American remains a core responsibility of the Department of Justice. Well, I mean, they're gonna say they want to protect civil rights of every American, but they're gonna let the FCC violate your civil rights by requiring you to give your identity over to make a basic purchase of piece of technology you essentially have to operate in modern society, a cell phone. They say they're protecting civil rights, but they are rewriting the definition of domestic terrorism so that if you don't hold the same beliefs that they do, they could propose that you are a domestic terrorist. Doesn't seem like they are looking to protect civil rights to me. Leo Terrell, chair of the DOJ Task Force to Combat Anti-Semitism, will lead the ASAC. The committee will provide advice and recommendations to the Attorney General and Department of Justice leadership on coordinated, timely, and effective responses to anti-Semitism. So the Advisory Committee on Anti-Semitism is basically just a way for the Department of Justice to look more into anti-Semitism, and that brings us to the IHRA, the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. Why is the IHRA important? Well, the IHRA, their working definition of anti-Semitism gets used by a lot of government entities to describe what they call discrimination under their anti-discrimination laws. You know, Title V, schools, universities receive federal money, cannot allow discrimination based on race, color, nation, origin, or religion. So, federal agencies treat anti-Semitism as covered when it targets Jews based on shared ancestry or ethnic characteristics, not merely religion alone. That's why a lot of stuff on campus can end up becoming civil rights problems. The real issue is the IHRA definition now says anti-Semitism can include hatred of Jews, but the examples they provide include Israel. So now we are conflating Israel more and more with the protected class of being Jewish. And if you deny Jewish self-determination, aka the ability for Israel to level Gaza and take and occupy land that's not theirs, they're going to say that you're committing anti-Semitism. And really, they're blurring the lines on purpose between Jewish bigotry and criticisms of Israel, which is a secular state. Federal policies, Trump Executive Order 13899 told agencies enforcing Title V to consider IHRA related materials, and a 2025 order reaffirmed that and expanded that approach after October 7th. The effect now is that schools can face federal pressure from protests, encampments, any sort of anti-Semitic environment should be investigated, should be handled. No one should be making a person feel uncomfortable or unsafe simply for being Jewish. But now, if you criticize the actions of Israel, you could have your scholarship at jeopardy in college. Furthermore, with the conflatement of anti-BDS laws, you can't even say, hey, I don't want my county to be invested in Israel. I don't want my tax money to be going over there. We already send enough money in aid packages and weapons and helping them fight wars. Why is my county buying Israeli bonds? I wrote a long article a couple weeks ago about Palm Beach County buying $1 billion now in Israeli bonds, and how that seemed to have been arrived at through a combination of lowering investment standards and allowing county commissioners to make decisions that went against what the local voters wanted. So, the IHR framework doesn't work alone. It ties into the anti-BDS laws, state contracting rules, pension investment restrictions, and grant conditions. So now you have legal and political pressure for cities, universities, public workers, and contractors to not be able to say you want to boycott or divest from Israel. There's laws in a lot of places saying that states and the government can't give money to a contractor who says they're boycotting. You bastard. Says that they're going to boycott Israel. San Marcos, Texas. Local ceasefire resolution became more than symbolic. The governor of Texas threatened to cut off their state funding, their state grants, claiming them having a ceasefire resolution violated Texas policy against boycotts of Israel, called it anti-Semitic. So now they're putting more pressure on people to not criticize the administration. That all ties in together. But in a very unpopular war in the Middle East, but if you're a county official, you can't even make a public statement about it, or they will threaten to withhold your federal funding. And of course, American Jewish Committee wants to say that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. When Jews are verbally or physically harassed, or Jewish institutions and houses of worship are vandalized in response to actions of the state of Israel, it is anti-Semitism. Which you could definitely say that. The problem is a lot of these Jewish institutions are hosting land sales for the occupied land in Gaza, so it really benefits them to conflate bigotry against Jewish people, which is wrong, with anti-Zionism, because it gives them the perfect scapegoat to do whatever they want. You push back and they say you're anti-Semitic. These new laws and rules say, hey, you're criticizing Israel, boycotting them, made a public declaration about them. Now we can withhold your federal funding, your state funding. You have a scholarship, you're in college, we can threaten to take that away from you. If you're a business that works with state, now we can say, hey, no more contract for you. And they even go so far as to say the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement, that the end goal of the movement is to undermine and eliminate Jewish rights. I mean, God forbid that you don't want your local county, such as Palm Beach, to have $1 billion invested in Israeli bonds. A bond that's rating got dropped because of the war, and now a lot of people don't even advise it as a reliable bond because who knows what's going to happen over there, being that they're in a war. So if you say, hey, I don't want my tax dollars going into this bond when we could spend it on local infrastructure, now they're saying that you want to undermine and eliminate Jewish rights. Which, of course, the BDS movement's background is social justice for Palestinian rights, but they're going to conflate any critique of Israeli investment with BDS movement, anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism. That brings me to the geofenced churches. This one's a really interesting one. We had a FARA registration, this has been months ago now, by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Israel. They proposed registering Show Faith by Works LLC, and their idea was that they would geofence some churches, collect that data, and use it to push a narrative. Here we have some names associated with the FARA registration, which those guys aren't nearly as interesting as Chad Schneider, who is going to lead the whole thing. And they were going to have grassroots, Greystone HR grassroots staff. They're going to put $3.25 million into that, and then additional options, bringing that up to over $4 million. And these are the daily activities of the people that would be involved. Coordinating, marketing, direct spend, coordinate with top-tier Hollywood talent to book Christian celebrities and Christian athletes to deliver pro-Israel messaging and use Hollywood connections to build a 5-star October 7th experience trailer. Coordinate with Woody Allen and the Israeli consulate. Woody Allen, did I just throw that in there when I read coordinate with Woody and the Israeli consulate and others to take existing content and compile it and add it to the website, create pastoral resources and content and calendars to deliver messaging to our Christian podcast partners. So they're going to hire Hollywood talent, book Christian celebrities and athletes to deliver pro-Israel messaging, use Hollywood connections to build an experience trailer about October 7th, so when they're going to have propaganda, and then they're going to have the Israeli consulate and others take existing content, compile it, add it to a website, social media channels, and add it to pastoral resource teams, making sure that the content going out is effective. And then they'll distribute that to podcasts in the United States. They'll distribute it to Christian blogs, and they'll have videos that get played in churches during the morning announcements. And they planned on developing a traveling experience that would be in the back of a trailer, and they would drive this from state to state and have virtual reality units that people could get in, and they would basically have October 7th propaganda and encourage Christians to support the secular state of Israel. Let's get down here a little further. There's better information about that at the bottom, but here's the interesting part. Here's the list of churches that they intended to do this at, the city it's in, the state, and how many how many people they believe go to that church. So this is a long list. I know some of these churches here in Colorado. Rocky Mountain Calvary Chapel, Colorado Springs. Red Rocks Church. Go by that one all the time driving up 70. Lone Tree Word of Life Christian Center. Greenwood Village Community Church. Mission Hills Church in Littleton. Faith Evangelical Free Church. Foothills Bible Church. Fort Collins Timberline Church. You know, I think last time I was up in Fort Collins, I think I saw that one. I'm not sure if I saw the Faith Evangelical one. Not up in Fort Collins that much. The Colorado Springs ones I definitely recognize. Mount Springs Church, New Life Church, Rocky Mountain Calvary Chapel, Woodman Valley Chapel, First Presbyterian Church, and the list goes on and on. They're going to go through Texas. Look at all these churches. Denton Bible Church, Shoreline Christian Center in Austin. I mean, it's just crazy how many churches they planned on going to, which they say in the outline of the documentation, these churches aren't a definitive list. This is just where they're thinking about going. California. A lot of Cornerstones, a lot of Crossroads, First Christian, First Family, First Baptist. And then you got a list of denominations. They don't really care what denomination you are. Their intention is to hit you with propaganda. So here we go. Show faith by works. You have an address. Contact person Chad J. Schneider. You got a phone number and an email for him. You can look him up online. You'll find him. He's not exactly hard to find. So they say it's for Christian outreach in California, Nevada, Arizona, and Colorado, but they have some information here on what they intend to do. Combat low American evangelical Christian approval of the nation of Israel. Use biblical arguments to highlight the importance of Israel and Jewish people to Christians. Educate Christians on the historical importance of Israel. Increase awareness of Palestinian ties to Hamas and their support for terrorism within evangelical populations. Counter new and evolving pro-Palestinian messaging as the global narrative shifts. So they just want to use this as a way to combat anti-Israel sentiment and pro-Palestinian sentiment, and go into your church and make you think that Israel has your best interests in mind, even though if you went over there and had a cross necklace on, they would probably spit on you. It happens to lots of people when they go outside of the church tourism zones. They have shock at how they are really viewed by the Israelis. If you go on a mission trip over there and follow the tour guide, you're probably going to love it. The second you leave the tour guide's protection, you're going to have a bad time. Goals. Use a combination of personal and professional outreach to the Christian community combined with digital targeting, social media outreach to increase positive associations. Impressive physical displays of pro-Israel educational materials. Messages to pastors and Christians about Israel's history, people, biblical significance. Educational messages about the history of Jews in the region. Educational messages about the creation of Israel, its legitimacy as a power. Education about ongoing activities. Anti-Palestinian state. Hamas as a terrorist organization. Never a state of Palestine. Now, that's not true at all, but makes sense that they would push that. Highlight that Palestinian and Iranian goals are not land-focused, but genocidal. Israel's goals are land-focused, though, and they don't care if they have to commit a genocide. Highlight history of Gaza and wasted opportunities to modernize. I don't think they didn't want to modernize. I think Israel had something to do with that. Grassroots, hire Christian staff. Have staff present at colleges, churches, seminaries. Create pastoral packages with pro-Israel support and educational materials that would make people not like Palestine or Palestinians. Build and deploy top-of-the-line mobile pro-Israel display with October 7th themes. They're probably not going to talk about the Hannibal Directive of October 7th, where their own men shot fleeing victims from the October 7th event, because Israel says we don't want the terrorists to be able to take hostages, so they just shoot them. They shoot their own people. So they want to make videos for the morning messaging. If you go to Christian church, you'll probably be fairly familiar with that, where before they start the sermon, you sit down and they have some video messages made by some of the staff. They talk about upcoming events. They say, hey, bring your kids to vacation Bible study. And then, you know, if there's another church or something going on, their pastor might have a video where they talk about it. But now you're going to throw in a history lesson on Israel. And they're going to make different messages for black churches. They're going to have youth messages. They're going to have special Catholic targeting by a Hispanic Anglican pastor. Messages in Spanish and other languages. They're really going to target in, and that is what the geofencing is for. They're going to gather your data. They want to know everything about you so that they can target you as effectively as possible. Oh, did I mention they have a lot of money in there to pay the pastors to allow this to happen? Pay staff. And, you know, they're going to pay off your church and its members to propagandize you, to give up your personal information. I want to know who this podcast of pastors is, because if they're in on this thing already with what we know about it, I mean, I want to ask them if I can interview them. Mobile 10.7 experience. Looks like they got a semi-trailer as the idea. You go in the back of it, you have television screens, augmented reality, virtual reality. highlights the atrocities from 10/7, shows footage of IDF explaining the difficulty of fighting bad guys in hostile territory with civilians. The IDF does not care if there's civilians there. There are so many videos of them just mowing down civilians and saying that Hamas was using them as human shields and that they were complicit with it. They bombed schools full of children. They kill babies. The IDF soldiers talk about loving to kill children, babies. They got in trouble for their male soldiers raping a Palestinian man. How are they going to talk about difficulty of fighting bad guys with civilians in the way when they love to shoot them? Anyway, VR headsets, woo, and set pieces, full-length TVs. Book different churches each Sunday, different colleges each weekday. And they, of course, want to hit Christian events, Harvest Festival in Anaheim, California, annual Southern Baptist Convention meetings, and the G3 conference. So they really want to take this trailer around and do it up with it. Here you have some more information from Show Faith by Works, some invoices. Here's the map of how they kind of want to target things. They want to hire regional teams, have a headquarters in Southern California, digital firm Rain Cross for better coordination. So they're going to work with Rain Cross. Worth looking into them and making sure they don't do any work for your church. Pastoral project lead Chad. This is kind of a breakdown of how. You get me another soda? You know, Chad would lead it. He'll have some helpers, social media influencers, and then have different state leaders and media people. And then they want to hire some Christian celebrity spokespeople. They talked about getting Chris Pratt. You know, I would hope he wouldn't do that, but he is in Hollywood. John Bott, Tim Tebow, Steph Curry? No. No, come on, Steph Curry. You know what? And they probably had a meeting where someone was like, hey guys, you know, when we do this, we're going to get our fellow Christians to side up with Israel and explain to them the problem with Palestine. And, you know, some of the younger guys that might be on the net about it, we could get Steph Curry and it'll be a slam dunk. Pastor Rick Warren, Greg Laurie, they must have liked him. They highlighted his name. And at the bottom, young female Christian influencers, kind of an afterthought. Here you can see some other trailers, you know, they thought they could kind of use as a blueprint. Geofence, here you go. Develop websites and maintain for at least a year, even if everything's completed quickly. Geofence, same churches running digital ads, both pro-Israel and anti-Palestinian. Geofence attendees of our events to follow up with social media advertising. Identify social media influencers to hire in exchange for favorable coverage. Manage creation and shooting of sympathetic TV style commercials. Distribute materials via social media. Optimize SEO traffic so that its favorable coverage is increased and unfavorable information is decreased. So they're going to geofence the churches, Christian events, Christian colleges. Basically, that means they're going to get a license to monitor cell phone data around these things. They will set up a device that will record anyone that connects to it with a cell phone signal, Bluetooth, RFID. There's a variety of, you know, digital footprints that these devices put off all the time that they're in your pocket. Cell phones are very messy when it comes to leaving digital footprints everywhere. But under this fire registration, they would be allowed to go to these areas, designate a fence line, and everything inside of it they can record. So they're going to know when you got there, who you are, what cell phone you're using, other devices that you might have connected to in the area. And they're going to be able to then use that to target you with ads. It will follow you outside of the event, essentially, and you will get targeted with ads and material. They're going to hit you with propaganda long after you're away from the event that they geofenced. Largest Christian church geofencing campaign in U.S. history. Used to distribute our messages and encourage Christians and pastors to reach out. Precision based, ensures only our target market sees ads, maximizing the effectiveness of our outreach. This is what they were planning on hitting. 1 year messaging campaign. They plan on having 39,600,000 impressions. Cost per million. What is that? How does that CPM work? Percent of the budget. So audio messages, they expect to have 3,600,000 messages. CTV, OTT, same as the audio, 3,600,000. 20%, 20%, and then regular displays. But, you know, this is just saying they can do extra events. They can do extra pastoral targeting and making media packages. That's crazy to me that they would use your religion to try to propagandize you and gain their sympathy. I mean, that's just, it's outrageous is what it is. But they do have plans, and they need you to not get upset about building a resort on top of the grave sites in Gaza. Yeah, we're talking about New Gaza. And of course, I lost the file here. Let me bring it back up. This was presented in Davos. Isn't that where they do the World Economic Forum? I do believe so. You know, that place where they say that you'll own nothing and be happy about it. Yeah, very Christian. I see why they're targeting Christians, because anyone who actually wants to walk in the footsteps of Jesus isn't going to be about bombing a coastal city so that you could build a resort on it. Pretty sure he was against that sort of thing. Using religion to make money. I thought he went into a market and started flipping tables and whipping people over that. So, yeah. The FCC is going to kill your privacy around your phone. Trump's going to allow the Department of Justice to target people for being anti-American or not supporting the war in Iran or supporting Israel and the devastation in Gaza. You won't be able to be as anonymous as you thought you were because your phone's going to be tied to you. Even going to church, you're going to be having your data recorded. They're going to be able to use that to target you with ads. And further down the line on that one, I mean, once, you know, if Israel goes and gets all of your information from the geofencing and the FCC has a leak or something, or the NDAA goes through with Section 224 inside of it, and now Israel and our military are basically one and the same as we share everything with them. They get into the FCC data, and their Ministry of Foreign Affairs is going to know everything about you. They'll be able to tie your phone to your biometric data and your registry with that device, and they're going to know everything about you. And it's going to go beyond targeting you with ads at that point, especially if you end up not supporting the war effort, which they're going to be tracking because Trump had a directive for that. So now we're talking about New Gaza. Israel is already having real estate events in the US in synagogues and other restricted access areas where they're selling off occupied land that Palestinians until recently lived in, worked as farms, had thriving industry, commerce. They already had a working society. Don't let them tell you that they weren't utilizing their land properly. The only reason it wasn't developed further is because Israel wouldn't let them. Through their restrictions, they had hundreds of checkpoints through the area. They would shake people down. They wouldn't let the Palestinians develop. Honestly, for the amount of grief Israel was giving them, it was a testament to their will. How nice that area was prior to the invasion. So, Davos, New Gaza, coastal development, smart houses, resorts, ports, high-tech infrastructure, industrial zones. They're gonna build in Rafah and build housing for the workforce, which sounds like it could be teetering on slave labor. They're talking about work camps, and I don't know if they're going to be using the Palestinians, whoever's left. And when they talk about the aid that they're going to give them, they are specific to mention that they're going to use high-tech monitoring and biometric data to make sure that no terrorists get any of the aid that they're providing the Gazans, which just sounds like a way to control these people through food and water. And then they're going to build a work camp in Rafah. And you put two and two together. And so the Board of Peace, which hasn't done anything peaceful yet, is supposed to oversee the reconstruction, the aid, security, and Trump has given them $10 billion to help do it, which it's not like we don't already give them quite a bit of money. So your money, my money, is going to be used to develop a coastal resort town and a work camp that they will let their billionaire friends come and invest in the businesses and infrastructure there so that they can profit off of it. And we're going to pay for it. And if your city wants to divest from this, the anti-BDS laws can punish them. And if a contractor wants to boycott these projects, they can lose all of their government contracts. Your city council tries to propose a ceasefire or make a public resolution, and the state can withhold funds from them. And you go to church, and Israel's Ministry of Foreign Affairs gets your data, and they see that you don't support their efforts. And then once, God forbid, the NDAA goes through unaltered, our militaries merge, they get that FCC data where you will now have to register your phone when you purchase one, and they're going to know everything about you. And under Trump's new rules about anti-American values, you might be seen as a domestic terrorist and get locked up, all because you don't like the idea of your tax dollars going to help some asshole billionaire invest in a resort built on top of a mass grave site that was known as Palestine. And then you got they talk about the aid they're gonna give them. They say they've given a historic amount of aid. Well, they got the GDC company bringing in aid, but they openly say that they use high-tech systems to handle humanitarian logistics and crisis response. The high-tech aid is technically high-tech control. They're using biometric monitoring, they're using camera systems and AI systems and to monitor and make sure they're not giving aid to terrorists. You can't even go on the GDC website anymore, gdc.company, and see how they do these things. It's now password protected. I guess too many people wanted to know about how they're using high-tech infrastructure to deliver this aid to Gaza, so they decided to put it behind a password. I just tried looking at it again because I saw it in the past and didn't think to screenshot it. I didn't think I would have to, and now you can't get to it. It makes me wonder, though. Ah, so it does look like the Wayback Machine has a little bit on their website. Previously, they had request forms for humanitarian aid. They had a couple documents about how they did work in Yemen. Let's see here. And they had this sweet video. GDC. It shows them giving water, dropping off packages, and it describes itself as the Uber for war zones and someone ordering something on a phone app. The only weird thing about that is that it's a soldier with a machine gun delivering it. And they're going to show you right here, they've got drones with tracking technology, following vehicles, monitoring people coming in and out. They know what they're doing here. This isn't just some company bringing aid. They're going to control the flow of food and water. They're going to monitor people with this technology, the same technology they're using in these churches, to know whose people are. They're going to track with cameras and biometric data. And if you're someone who's fought against them, even saying that you don't agree with the project, you're probably not going to be able to get assistance. You're not going to be getting food and water. You're going to be suffering. Which, you know, that's probably part of the plan, is to push the people that would resist out and get rid of them. Why would they want them there in the first place? So here's the master plan, rough 100,000 plus housing units, 180 religious, cultural, vocational centers, 200 education centers, 75 medical facilities. This looks depressing to me. I don't know about you. This looks like back-to-back high-density housing. So probably a glorified labor camp. And then you scroll down to New Gaza, and this looks like a Star Trek city from the future. Nice and clean, lots of green grass, trees. They plan on having $25 billion worth of investments in utilities, $3 billion in commercial zones, $1.5 billion investment into schools. 13,000 is the average annual household income they plan for, which is not bad for a place that just got leveled by Tomahawk missiles my taxes bought. Oh, where did that go? I mean, it's just a lot. We're really getting our country involved in Israel in an alarming manner, and our administration is just doing some very uncouth things. I mean, if they were doing stuff that really supported the community and the citizens, and purchasing power was up and cost of housing, cost of living was down, we'd probably all be celebrating having UFC at the White House. We would say, wow, it's the people's house and he invited the people to it to do an event. But to me, it looks like the fall of Rome. It looks like the Colosseum. We're having people battle for our entertainment, and the emperor's up there saying, let him live or let him die. It seems like too much. Let's see. So the Board of Peace, they want comprehensive decommissioning of heavy weapons tunnel military infrastructure. They want Gaza-wide demilitarization, which goes back to the biometric stuff. I don't know. I mean, I think we could wrap it up. I mean, the FCC, know your customer law is going to mean the government can always tie a real person to your device. I mean, your device is already being tracked everywhere it goes, and we're allowing foreign countries in so that they can track our devices when we go to churches or religious events or even protests or political spaces. And then we have the federal agencies being told to look at people's political affiliations if they have anti-American views, if they disagree with the administration, broad ideological labels. And now ordinary activism is being treated like a threat, and you don't have the anonymity. You can't get away from, can't have any privacy to even dissent against your government, which is a protected right. It's, the Constitution. It's our amendments. And then our tax dollars tied to a massive development and security project in the Middle East that no one asked for. We didn't vote for this. We voted for no new wars, and you can't even have your local government divest from it because there's laws against it, and there's laws against even criticizing, because the IHRA language is being used to decide what anti-Semitism is. And they say anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. So you can't even divest or boycott and criticize without being labeled an extremist. And under NPSM-7, if you're an extremist, you're a domestic terrorist. And they're tracking your phone everywhere you go. So now you're a domestic terrorist. They're tracking you, and they're already coming to people's houses and saying, hey, why did you post this online saying you disagree with Israel? It's just all too much. And I think the one thing we can do, though, is everyone can go online and leave a comment on the Know Your Customer page. The FCC is open for comment. Go over there. Tell them that you don't like this. It's a good chance for us to stand up for our rights, and it's a first step in getting some of our civil liberties back. All right, everybody. We'll be back here in a little bit.